This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
Food and place. I'm Sheila Dillon, and in this edition of the food programme, we're off in search of the authentic.
So my name is Zach Stafford. I am a journalist. I host a show called Vibe Check on SiriusXM Radio, and I spent a few years of my life writing a lot about hot chicken for some reason. I grew up in a mixed-race family. My father's black, my mother's white, and we lived in a town outside of Nashville that was predominantly white. So I didn't have a lot of people that looked like me around. And my dad, who was a very dark-skinned man and from Tennessee and has a lot of pride being a Tennessean, would take my sister and I sometimes when we were coming back home from downtown to Prince's to pick up some chicken. And he loved the chicken there so much.
Welcome to the food programme. I'm Sheila Dillon. And this week, we're talking destination food, the foods we travel the world to eat, the underpinnings of gastronomic tourism. Let's start with Zach's story about the city of Nashville, Tennessee. Not its music, but its food, hot chicken.
So hot chicken is a chicken that is fried, which is a very typical style of Southern cuisine. But what makes it special is that it's tossed in an incredible blend of spices that are really, really hot. And every chef has their own blend, but the purpose of the chicken is to be scorching hot, to where you sometimes sweat when you eat it. And I remember it being one of the few places that not only did I see people that looked like my dad's side of the family eating, hanging out, enjoying something, but it was the first time I would talk about a food at school and no one knew what I was talking about. That was another thing that made me feel othered, but there was a sense of pride in it and the secrecy and the fact that I was part of this society of people that ate this really hot chicken that my dad would have to take. This is an overshare, but my dad would have to drink a laxative after people have to do things to get it through. It's such a production of eating it. So it just stuck with me forever. And then when I was older and I was living in Chicago and I was a reporter and I was just at dinner one night and I saw hot chicken on the menu, I was so confused at how this childhood dish that I hadn't eaten in years was now appearing in the west side of Chicago in a place I didn't grow up.
This is Nashville.
The secret to Nashville is hot chicken.
He get out of this kitchen, but you and me, baby, gonna make a hot chicken.
Ms. Andre Prince Jeffries in an ad from Nashville's tourist office. She's the current owner of Prince's Chicken, keeper of the legacy and great niece of Thornton Prince. In his time, a great ladies' man who, legend has it, created hot chicken when a crossed lover fed him his favourite fried chicken, so highly spiced she thought it'd make him sick, but he actually relished it and made it the basis of a successful business. In an article for Eater.com, Zach tells the story of hot chicken's move from the other side of the tracks in pre-civil rights time to Nashville icon and big bucks.
So hot chicken has become, I would say, the most famous export culturally out of Nashville, Tennessee, besides country music and music at large. It is a dish that has just recently been popularized, I would say since 2008 is when it really kind of started taking off. But through historical records and reporting and interviews, we know it's been around since the early 1900s, specifically with a family called the Thornton family, who says they created it, but it seems like it was created in the general North Nashville area of Tennessee.
In your article, you talk about almost the Disnification of the way that the chicken has added to a kind of Disneyland quality to Nashville now.
Yeah, no, it totally has. Nashville became a place that people started traveling to at huge rates. It became the number one, still to this day, destination for bachelorette parties, seemingly overnight. And as that became a tourist destination like a Las Vegas, they had to create an industry to support all this interest that couldn't just be concerts or bars. And the mayor at the time, Bill Purcell, he was very intentional about that. He saw this new wave hitting and did his own research and figured out that Nashville Hot Chicken was a dish that he felt was the only dish that originally came from Nashville and nowhere else. So he used that to create a festival that became its own tourist touch point, and then the dish started popping up in all the menus of every restaurant that began opening up in Nashville. But because the new restaurants were opening up in downtown Nashville, in wealthier areas, people began assuming those places created this dish, and the family was erased really quickly.
So it is a completely conscious creation, Nashville as the hot chicken city. I mean, you can do it. You can build an iconic building, or you can decide that a foodstuff is going to be what identifies a city. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. And it has nothing really to do about the city of Nashville, but it does, when you peel back the hot chicken of it all and you think about the labor, who's producing it, who profits, who doesn't, that becomes very Nashville, that it is racialized, that white restaurants are making tons of money and have created chains like Hattie B's, which is super popular around the United States now, but Prince's struggles to survive to this day. That's the American and Tennessee part of it.
So if you're going to Nashville, hot chicken is your destination food, your first stab at an authentic food experience. There are plenty more on the list for the tourist looking for authenticity. Pastel de nates in Lisbon, bang mi in Hanoi, and you could tour West Africa in search of the best jollof rice, or even just travel to Melton Mowbray for the most authentic pork pie. A poll commissioned by Eurostar recently revealed that over half of Brits travelling have food as the main reason to go abroad. But words are tricky. Authentic food. Does the lens of authenticity give us a clear picture and the best taste when we're travelling? Well, producer Sam Grist and I thought we'd get on a train to somewhere that might give us some answers. We had to become food tourists. The BBC budget led us to Eurostar, cheap day returns to Brussels, maybe not the most famous food destination on the continent within 2 hours of London, but my school trip to Belgium a long while ago left an impression. My first great chocolate, my first waffle, my first French fries. What food are you looking forward to eating in Brussels?
We actually was about to go to a waffle place.
Yes, we're going to get some waffles. We also had the fries before, so that was nice.
I tried the meatballs.
And the beer.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I guess.
It's always best to have a guide, and ours was editor-in-chief of Le Fooding, Elizabeth de Boers. Le Fooding is now owned by Michelin, with millions of followers on social media. They produce a traditional guide to food in France, as well as, from last year, the food of Belgium, written by Elizabeth. Tourist area, but ahead of us there's a big crowd.
Yes, so you can see people queuing, and they are here to get their first French fries, or what they think is good French fries.
But it's only 11:30 in the morning.
There is no hour for good French fries.
We wandered through Brussels' Grand Place and finally tasted what Elizabeth said was the best waffle Brussels had to offer. And then followed Elizabeth into a street packed, she said, with food traps for the unwary.
So we are at the intersection of the Queen's Gallery and the Butcher Street, Rue des Bouchers. And we are going to walk in the street, and you will see that it's mostly places you want to avoid.
And yet it looks beautiful.
So yeah, here it's written our Belgian specialties. So they have carbonate flamande. It's a ragout, mijoté, how do you call that?
A ragout of beef.
A ragout of beef made with beer. You also have meatballs with tomato sauce. C'est bon, je vois, merci monsieur. Ça va, merci. So he wants to give us the menu.
But we should avoid it.
Yes.
But
So-
that one would set off I would think no, because the man is standing at the door trying to draw us in.
Yes.
And it says, promo. And, lots of, you think, no. Yeah.
This is really traditional.
Is it?
Yes, aux Armes de Bruxelles. But it's expensive too.
I mean, how difficult is it? I mean, you're here for a couple of days. Food is not your business, but you would like to eat well and you'd like to eat typical dishes. Is it difficult?
I think it's very difficult, especially in the city center where you can have different quality restaurants next to each other.
Well,
I think
as we just saw, that
Yes.
one you said was very poor, and then this one,
Is very good.
Zam de Bruxelles, is good.
So I think having a good guide is always the best idea. That's also why we have Le Fooding, and some places like that are in Le Fooding. And we also, it's a lot of hip and new restaurants, but it's also traditional restaurants like de Brigitte, where we are going after that. Because for us, it's also important to show and guide people to local traditional places.
Is the pursuit of authenticity, does that sometimes get in the way of actually having good food in a city?
Yes, and especially in Brussels, where the food scene is changing a lot right now. Maybe you shouldn't try the oldest restaurant in the city if it's to have a meal.
But what about if you go to Naples? Naples claims to be the place where pizza started. What would you do? You'd say to yourself, in Naples, I have to have a pizza or not? Because you'd think that was an authentic Neapolitan experience.
I think you can have amazing Neapolitan pizzas in Tokyo, for example. But yes, when you are in the city where it comes from, why not trying it? But I think we shouldn't pursue the authentic pizza.
Someone who's thought a lot about food and place is food writer Anja von Bremsen. Her latest book is National Dish. Over Zoom from her home in New York, I asked her, why is it that people travel to eat?
Well, I think they're looking for pleasure and they're looking to have a good time. And that was always the traditional thing. But now, let's say since the 90s especially, we have this search for the elusive grail of authenticity, whatever that means. And that's a tricky notion. And it's very much a construct because what are we talking about? We want to go to a place and see mom and pop restaurant where, old couples are dancing salsa and eating mofongo, and you want to think that you're the only foreign person there. But if the same people want to go out for sushi, it's authentic to them. We are projecting our fairly essentialist notions onto other cultures that can sometimes be reductive. Oh, these people should be eating that food and we want to join them in that. And that exists, obviously, and it's really important to seek out these experiences, but one also has to keep track of that tricky idea of that these things are also constructs.
Constructs. What would you give us? I mean, your book is full of the most extraordinary examples, but what examples of food, best examples of food that we think are deeply connected to a place, but actually have only been elevated to that in recent history?
I think almost any food, because when you're thinking about tourism, generally, it really starts with the train travel, right? In the 1860s. And with tourism comes the guidebook, and the guidebook tells you the local attractions, and then there's an innkeeper, a hotelier that wants to lure tourists and say, well, this is like the authentic dish of this region or that region. Then comes the car travel in the 1920s. Remember that Michelin is a tire company, yet it starts giving culinary stars. I looked at my book, in National Dish. I looked at pizza, which was indelibly tied to Naples. It really is a Neapolitan invention, but until the 20th century, it was the food of the poor that was scorned and dismissed by Northern European travelers. It takes regional authorities to say, okay, how do we lure tourists? And the first push was with domestic tourism. You had all these countries saying, okay, how do we bring people here? And putting a gastronomic specialty along with a local church and museum was always a good idea to promote a region. So it starts with local, domestic, regional tourism, and then it becomes an international phenomenon.
This is a slightly, philosophical question, but what does it mean to travel seeking food experiences when we have a globalized world?
I think we're looking for a sense of connection. And as the world gets more and more globalized, that sense of connection eludes us. We're precisely seeking out the local, the particular, the regional, and special to a place because we're so globalized.
In Brussels, Elizabeth had taxied us away from the centre to a restaurant that met my idea of perfection even before we'd seen the menu. A roaring fire, wood-panelled walls, and already at 12:30, alive with the buzz of people enjoying themselves.
The place where we are is Les Brigitines. It's an old restaurant. I like it because I love the decorum. I love that it's warm. I love the waiters are a bit rude, but still okay. Merci, monsieur. And I don't know, it's really comfy, good quality food. It is Belgian food. That for me, it's one of the definitions.
We'd been joined for lunch by Christine Doublé, co-director of La Fooding. Christine, we're going into deep waters here. What is Belgian food? You know, what do you two mean when you say that? I mean, we've just walked through streets and streets of people, you know, Belgian food, waffles, chocolate, mou frite, you know, the authentic. So what is it we're going to have here?
So in the guide we worked on last year, one of the journalists whose name is Michel Verlinden pointed out something really interesting to us, which is that most Belgian food is saucy and has a sort of rich, deep sauce, and that's one of the main links that you can find between all of the traditional dishes in Belgium. And it's not only about the sauce, it's also sort of like something that envelops you, so it's warm, it's comforting, it's rich. And I think that a lot of the dishes that you can find here at Les Brigitines, for example, their famous vol au vent, which they change with the seasons, so that's a main saucy Belgian dish that we're going to taste today.
Elle est chaude, avec des oignons coupés très fins.
Il n'y a pas d'accompagnement?
Non.
Non, mais je veux aussi 3 vol au vent alors.
3 vol.
Vol au vent are edible bowls made up of rings of puff pastry piled on top of each other. They arrived on our plates in stages. First, the empty pastry cups. Then they were filled with a casserole of chicken, several kinds of mushrooms, and a few slivers of Brussels sprouts, naturally. All then topped with a hollandaise-like sauce, and finally surrounded by a large scattering of fries, each part theatrically delivered by a different waiter, and all so good. Well, the question is this more authentic, Elizabeth, than all those tourist places that you kept us out of this morning? Or is this the fact this is just beautifully cooked with good ingredients? The difference is the quality of the food rather than authenticity.
What I like is that, yes, the quality of the products is way better than what we saw before. But what I like too is that, as you said, it was really theatrical. So they are generous. They want to make you laugh. They want to make you feel good, have a good moment. That's also authentic, like Belgian authenticity.
See, I think that's the difference. And when I first came to Belgium, I realized that, you know, that I was eating some things that I'd eaten before, like these Belgian fries and moule, but it was served with great style and humor and a sort of pride in it.
I like that you say that there is pride in what they do here, because Belgian people are not really proud people. Huh? They're always the little brother of everyone. And so, yeah, I'm happy that you feel like it feels like they are proud of what they do, but not of what they are.
That outstanding meal, accompanied by Belgium's best beer, Cantillon's Lambic, wild brewed and aged in oak-like wine, made me wonder about that earlier conversation with Elizabeth on how the search for the authentic destination foods might be a hindrance to a good meal. Yet we'd just experienced both great food and a traditional Brussels meal that shed light on Belgian history and character. Which all raised the question, why is it some places have lots of iconic foods and some almost none? The food programme is based in Bristol, a university city with great music and art, a tourist destination with a distinct culture, but no distinctive food, no food that shouts Bristol.
It's a proper Bristol breakfast.
A proper Bristol breakfast.
Bristol in all its glory is absolutely lush.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, Joe. Sorry, just what do you have for breakfast?
I didn't have anything for breakfast, and so I was hoping that Radio 4 were going to treat me to a massive Caribbean delicacy.
Joe Sims is an actor, a born and bred Bristolian, and the new presenter of a proper Bristol breakfast, the Radio Bristol Morning Show. The right man, we thought, to ask about a food that says Bristol. We met at Glenn's Kitchen in the unfancy and lively St Paul's area of the city. It's a Caribbean restaurant in a community centre, which has now itself become a tourist draw after Glenn and his team were featured on BBC Two's Remarkable Places to Eat.
Joe, if you had to come up with a food that would say Bristol to you, what would you choose?
I don't know, because I don't think it has got like any one food which cuts through as a quintessential Bristolian food. But what Bristol doesn't suffer with is the homogenisation of the high street. What we've got is we support our local butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, and so when it comes to culinary prowess, it's kind of rich melting pot. So people come from all over the world and are allowed to establish themselves here and bring their own kind of cuisine, and then from that cuisine it evolves and it becomes something, I don't know, maybe for the evolution of indigenous foods from different countries, comes to Bristol, is allowed to evolve, allowed to mix with other wonderful nations and cultures to bring something quite special to the pot. So it feels like we have got a glittering array of gastronomic treats, whatever you're into. But if you don't like that, then I'm going to say Ribena or Harvest Bristol Cream. And of course, we got Pie Minster pies as well, so we're pretty good for pies and pasties.
It's true. We once did a programme about pies and we recorded it, Pie Minster pies. They're very good.
Well, do you know what the nice thing about Pie Minster pies is those boys that run the show there have got a real social conscience, and I feel like that about where we are today as well. This is Glenn's Kitchen in St Paul's, and in terms of having that social conscience, they do lots and lots of stuff. It's a community centre and people come from all over the place, and it transcends kind of class or culture. People come in and everyone's treated the same, and they do lots of wonderful outreach work here as well, which is just so important.
It's very interesting, this conversation, because in a sense it's showing us that our idea of destination food is too narrow. You, Joe, are saying that what you love beside the food is the fact that these restaurants have a social conscience, and that it's that less easy to pin down-ness that is special and interesting, and it's beyond Nashville's Hot Chicken. Tell us who you are.
Mike Gilmore. I'm a journalist with BBC Radio Bristol. I've been living here for just over a year.
So, as a newcomer to Bristol, how would you answer the questions I've been asking Joe?
I find that the more I go out and the more I do things, I agree with Joe very heavily in the fact that it is a mixing pot. It is a fusion central for all different kinds of foods. But one thing that has really stood out for me is the amount of Caribbean food. And I really think that there is a rich Caribbean culture here. I find that to me is very much representative of Bristol. And if you're down here in St. Paul's, where we are now, on Carnival, you see stalls all down the road up above there as well, and it's just full of people giving us their homemade recipes. And that to me is a big part of Bristol, and I think that is representative of this city.
Yeah, what's up?
Introduce yourself, Glenn.
Oh, I'm Glenn Crooks from Glenn's Kitchen in Bristol, St. Paul's.
So what are the main things, what are your star dishes here?
My star dishes is jerk chicken and curry goat and ackee and saltfish. And most people come to get that.
We're just trying to find out what is, or if there even could be, a food that says Bristol. What would you say?
Well, Glenn's Kitchen is well known now through the Remarkable Place to Eat with Michelle Roux and Fred. So that takes Bristol, St. Paul's, Glenn's Kitchen, worldwide. So you got people from all over come here. Through the lockdown they came, after the lockdown they came. They're still coming because the program repeats itself.
Well, popular because the food's good.
Yeah. So we got Jamaican food, cook the original way.
That's marvellous. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I look forward to eating something.
Yes,
now.
yes.
Salivating just at the thought of it. I'm very excited about this.
Well, you're going to enjoy it.
I'm no Fred Syriacs, but I am here for it. Don't look as nice with my shirt off.
That'd be good.
I was curious to ask global wanderer and expert on national dishes Anja von Bremsen if she was surprised that we hadn't been able to pin down any particular food to represent the culturally mixed city of Bristol.
No, not at all. You can say that about New York, London, actually Paris. Again, it's certain countries have a model, a self-identification as a multicultural place. Britain, certainly, the United States, and it's fine. I think the whole idea of one dish that we're supposed to be looking at can get overbearing, and again, it's constructed. So yes, Naples is lucky to have its pizza, but Bristol is all about diversity. I prefer that.
We started the programme talking about Nashville, Tennessee and hot chicken, and wondered, was Zach Stafford happy that hot chicken has added to the Disnification of his hometown?
Oh, that's such a good question. I have mixed feelings about it. I love that the place I grew up continues to thrive and grow and become a player on the world stage. I love when I go home, there's much more to do now than ever before. There are so many restaurants, so many bars, so many cultural events. It's all fueled by people wanting to see hot chicken or eat it or see country music. So I love all of that. But it also is bittersweet when I sit in restaurants downtown and I don't see anyone that looks like me sitting at a place like Chauhan's, which is a famous restaurant downtown that's Indian fusion, but they do a hot chicken recipe there, and it's Indian fusion. So it's exciting to see that a part of my culture is now fusing with a global culture and becoming part of a global conversation. But then it's also sad to see that the family that I've gotten to know over the years personally has no benefit from this.
You took your dad, I gather, to one of the hot chicken places, and he wasn't that impressed.
He wasn't. Prince's has a new one in South Nashville, and he didn't love it as much. And a lot of it had to do with the nostalgia of the place he grew up going to. And my dad, I realized as he was telling me that he was whatever about the chicken, was that the chicken wasn't just about the food, but it was about he got to go to his community, he got to see friends, he got to sit around and hang out for a while. And I think that's what people should strive for with all food, is what makes you feel at home and connected to a sense of home. And and I think that's why I don't want to be too mean to Hattie B's, because to a lot of people visiting Nashville, that's really special to them. Like, I'm sure they go to other chicken shacks and their sounds and they're like, oh, that reminds me of that wonderful trip I went on with my mom to Nashville. And I think that's totally valid, and I want them to have that too. I don't want to take that away.
Thanks for listening. Producer Sam Grist and I hope you enjoyed our little dip into food authenticity. It made us both think of what foods we in the UK might highlight to please tourist palates here. Morecambe Bay potted shrimp, for example, Perry's, Cornish sardines, Scotch pies, Melton Mowbray pies, Arbroath smokies, Vale of Evesham asparagus, Armagh Bramley apples. And you can always go into the Food Programme archive. We've made quite a lot about local specialities, including an episode in 2022 about Staffordshire oatcakes. Have a listen.
I think the power of the show was crazy back then.
The X Factor promised to turn ordinary people into pop stars.
We stood there behind the doors when 16 million people are about to watch you go on stage, and Simon just stood next to you like, good luck, girls, good luck.
I'm Chi-Chi Zundu. For years, I was a BBC showbiz journalist who covered every twist and turn. I want to go behind the scenes to find out from staff and contestants what it was like.
You don't just want average people. You wanted, it was so bad. They were comical.
I feel like I was humiliated just for the entertainment.
Did the show ever come back and they said to me, Sam, will you come on and do it again? I'd be like, what time do you want me?
Over 6 episodes, I'm looking back at the good and the bad of one of Britain's biggest TV shows. For BBC Radio 4, this is Offstage, Inside the X Factor. Listen on BBC Sounds.
Hi, I'm Danny Pellegrino from the Everything Iconic podcast. And who doesn't love a classic burger from McDonald's? That's right. McDonald's classic burgers are hotter, juicier, and tastier than ever. The patties are cooked to juicy perfection. I love the cheese perfectly melted on top. I love the Big Mac that has a special sauce in every bite. I love the pillowy, soft, golden bun. So in the words of the Hamburglar, which I believe means grab McDonald's best burgers ever before Hamburglar does at a McDonald's near you.